Everyone was already seated when my father told me to stay in the kitchen. The dining room was full, glasses lifted, voices low, waiting for the investor to arrive. My sister stood near the entrance, smiling like she owned the place. No one looked at me when he said it. Not the staff I trained, not the guests he invited, not my mother sitting 2 tables away. I stood there holding a plate that was meant to introduce the menu I created. And I understood, without anyone saying it, that I was not meant to be seen that night quietly. My father had always spoken in decisions, not discussions. That night was no different. He didn't raise his voice, didn't explain himself, didn't even look at me long enough to see if I understood. He just said it once, like it had already been agreed on somewhere without me. "Stay in the kitchen, your sister will handle the front." Then he turned away, already moving toward the dining room, already shaking hands, already smiling in that practiced way that made people trust him before they knew him. I stayed where I was for a few seconds after he left, not frozen, not shocked, just still. The kind of still that comes when something settles into place, when a quiet understanding replaces whatever hope was there before. Around me, the kitchen kept moving. Pans shifted, orders were called, plates were wiped clean, at the edges. No one asked me anything, no one questioned it. 14 months earlier, when he called me in Chicago, his voice had sounded different. Softer, almost careful. He told me he had been thinking about me, about what I had built on my own. He said he wanted to do something together, something real. Something that would last: a restaurant back home, my kitchen, his business experience, a partnership. He said the words slowly, like he knew they mattered. Co-owner. 40%, your name on everything. I remember standing in the walk-in cooler with my phone pressed to my ear, surrounded by labeled containers and the low hum of the compressor. I didn't speak for a few seconds, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't trust what I was hearing. My father didn't offer things like that, not to me, but he kept talking, filling the silence, describing the space, the concept, the opportunity. And somewhere in the middle of it, I stopped questioning and started believing. I gave my notice the next morning, packed my apartment in a week, moved back to a town I had spent years trying to leave. The building he had secured was exactly what he described: high ceilings, exposed beams, enough space for a real kitchen, not a compromise. I walked through it that first day and felt something settle in my chest. This could work. This could be mine. From that point on, everything I did was for that place. I built the menu. From scratch, testing dish after dish until it felt right. I sourced ingredients from farms within driving distance. Waking up early to meet suppliers and build relationships that would hold. I hired the team myself, trained them the way I had been trained. With precision and consistency, I worked long hours without questioning it because it felt like investment, not sacrifice. My father handled the rest. That was the arrangement: permits, contracts, legal work, finances. He told me not to worry about it, said it was his responsibility. I didn't push. I trusted him. When my sister started showing up more often, I didn't think much of it at first. She said she wanted to help with marketing, with social media, with presentation. My father encouraged it. He said she had a natural way with people, that she understood how to make things appealing. I let her take photos, post updates, talk about the restaurant like it was already open. It didn't seem important compared to what I was doing in the kitchen. The first time she introduced herself as a co-founder, I thought I had misheard. The second time, I pulled my father aside and asked him about it. He brushed it off, said titles didn't matter, said we're all working toward the same goal. When I pressed a little more, he looked at me in a way that made it clear I had already said too much. Don't be difficult. Sienna. That was the word he used. Difficult. So I stopped asking. I told myself it would sort itself out, that the paperwork would reflect reality eventually, that what mattered was the work being done, not how it was being described in passing, standing. In that kitchen on opening night, listening to the sounds of a dining room I had built but wasn't allowed to enter, I realized that none of that had been a misunderstanding. It had been a decision, just not mine. It didn't start that night. That was just the first time it was visible to everyone else. For me, it had been there for years, just smaller, quieter. Easier to explain away growing up. My father didn't ignore me. That would have been simpler. He paid attention, just not in a way that left room for disagreement. If I did well, it was expected. If I questioned something, it became a problem to manage. My sister learned early how to move around that. She agreed quickly, smiled easily, and somehow always ended. Up closer to whatever he was proud of, I was the one who worked for it, the one who stayed late, fixed things, took on what needed to be done without being asked. It wasn't something I thought about at the time. It just felt normal. Families have roles, and I assumed mine was the one that required more effort. When I left for culinary school, it was the first time I stepped outside of that pattern. My father didn't approve. He said I was choosing something unstable, something beneath what I could have done. I went anyway, for years. Everything I built after that was separate from him. Every job, every promotion, every small success belonged to me alone. There was a kind of quiet in that, no approval, but also no interference. When he called me about the restaurant, I thought that was changing. I thought he had finally decided to see me differently. Looking back, the signs were there from the beginning, I just didn't name them. I wasn't included in meetings that had to do with ownership. When legal documents came up, I was told not to worry about the details. If I asked questions, the answers were vague, delayed, or redirected. My sister, on the other hand, was present in those spaces, not because she understood them, but because she was invited. She started speaking about the restaurant in ways that didn't match reality, saying "we decided" when I hadn't been consulted, describing dishes as collaborative efforts when I had developed them alone. At first, it sounded like exaggeration. Then it became consistent, repeated enough that people stopped questioning it. I heard vendors refer to her as the one in charge of direction. I heard my father introduce her as the person shaping the concept. Each time, I felt the same small pause inside me, followed by the same decision to let it go. It was easier to believe it would correct itself than to confront it and be told I was overreacting. That had always been the pattern. If something felt off, I adjusted. I worked more. I proved more. I stayed useful. The moment it shifted from discomfort to clarity came quietly. A few weeks before opening, one of the kitchen staff mentioned that he hadn't seen my name on any of the official documents. He said it casually, like it was an observation, not a warning. I told him it was probably a timing issue, something still being finalized. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. That night, I thought about it longer than I had before. Not in a dramatic way, just going over details, remembering conversations. Noticing what had been missing, I realized I had never actually seen anything with my name on it. Not once. Not in writing. Everything I believed was based on what I had been told. Even then, I didn't confront it directly. I told myself there was still time, that it would be addressed before it mattered, that opening night would come and everything would be in place the way it was supposed to be. Standing in that kitchen, hearing my sister laugh in the dining room while introducing a menu, she couldn't explain. I understood that it had already been decided long before I noticed I wasn't being pushed out in that moment. I had never been let in to begin with. The confirmation didn't come from my father. It came from paperwork he never intended for me to see. 3 weeks before opening, an insurance agent arrived with forms that required signatures from all listed owners. He laid them out on the front counter, neat and official, asking for confirmation before final approval. I picked up the first page without thinking. Under ownership, there were two names, my father's, my sister's. Nothing else. I read it again, slower this time, then a third time, like the words might rearrange themselves if I gave them enough attention. They didn't. The agent asked if everything looked correct. I said I needed a moment. My voice sounded normal, my hands felt steady. That was the part that surprised me. There was no immediate reaction, no visible shift, just a quiet recognition settling in. I asked for the full filing documents. He handed them over without hesitation. The date at the top was 6 months earlier. That meant while I was building the menu, hiring staff, sourcing ingredients, my father had already finalized a structure that didn't include me. This wasn't a last-minute decision. It wasn't an oversight. It was planned, signed, and filed. I took the papers to his office. He looked up when I walked in, then down at the documents in my hand. There was a pause, brief but noticeable. I asked him why my name wasn't there. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked where I got the papers. It was a familiar deflection. I repeated the question. He leaned back, crossed his arms, and said it was temporary. That adding another name during filing would have complicated things that he intended to include me later. His tone was calm, controlled, the same tone he used when he expected me to accept something without pushing further. I asked why my sister was included from the start.